Hi everyone, I'm Shivani. I'm a pre-doc researcher at Google Research India, and on behalf of our team, I'll be presenting our work on user attitudes and sources of AI authority in India. So, scholars across research areas such as STS and HCI have long been interested in understanding the user perceptions of algorithms and how they relate to human decision making. But the research in this area has often presented conflicting results depending on the context and the domain. Studies have shown that people tend to rely on human decisions for tasks with subjectivity or emotion, but not everyone has an equal level of trust in human decision making. Lustig and Nardi introduced the concept of algorithmic authority, where Bitcoin was viewed as an apolitical currency and more trustworthy than traditional financial institutions such as banks. Lee and Rich, in their recent study with Black people in the US, found that participants who mistrust human medical providers perceive healthcare AI as equally untrustworthy and as unfair. So, this underscores the need to consider the differences in social groups while studying the human perceptions of AI. And we focus on India, which is an under researched but important site with emerging AI deployments in many high stakes areas, a focus on AI policy by the Indian government, and most importantly, as a home to the world's second largest internet population. First, we conducted 32 semi structured interviews with people from various states in India. This was a balanced sample across gender, age groups, and level of internet exposure. We particularly wanted to learn from emerging internet users who have only accessed internet in the last 2 years. We ask questions around the general perceptions of AI, what people think AI means, what they think are the benefits, the harms with AI. And in the main part of the interview, we use 4 scenarios from healthcare and finance to probe participants' perceptions about AI, its usefulness, and how it compares to human decision making. Many interview respondents indicated an acceptance and trust towards AI decisions. So we then conducted a survey with 459 respondents with a limited scope to quantify the acceptability of AI with a larger sample. 79% participants in the survey indicated a significantly high acceptance of AI outcomes. Though this may seem like a positive result from our vantage point, we're going to talk about how a high acceptance coming from misplaced sources has a potential for causing harm. From the qualitative research, we find that people were willing to undergo medical treatments based on AI diagnoses, even when it contradicted a human doctor. They were also willing to accept loan assessment outcomes and, in fact, preferred that an AI evaluated their loan application over a human officer. We find that AI has acquired a legitimized power to influence people's actions without presenting adequate evidence of the capabilities of the system. Beyond the AI design considerations like the level of user control, the transparency, or even showing explanations, there are many social cultural factors which influence how much people are willing to accept decisions from an AI and consider those decisions as true and trustworthy. An intention to act upon an AI outcome due to any of these sources has a potential to cause harm, as these factors are not indicative of whether the system in this scenario is reliable or unbiased. So, many people in our research discussed how they were exhausted by the discriminations and unjust interactions with human institutions. AI was then seen as a mechanism to avoid corruption. If the institutions which participants were familiar with used appearances and identities as proxies, people believe that this would not be the case with an AI application. The narratives that surfaced in our research often originated from media, from news articles, from government perspectives, and the ways in which people talked about AI was often very optimistic and was really pessimistic. The pessimistic ideas were often things like killer robots originated from movies, which the participants did not really view as a possibility in the near future. So, the optimistic narratives, on the other hand, meant that people thought AI could benefit society, it would lead to progress, and thus they were more willing to trust and accept AI into their lives. We find also that AI authority is accompanied by four user attitudes of self blame, faith, forgiveness, and gratitude, which made people vulnerable to an under recognition of AI system errors and biases. Underpinning these attitudes were participants' beliefs that AI applications are highly reliable and infallible tools. So, participants had a faith in the capabilities and the intent of AI, even when they received an unfavorable outcome. They saw AI as highly reliable, gave estimates of 90 to 99% accuracy. People also thought that AI had either good or neutral intention and did not have any incentive to cheat or cause harm. On the other hand, participants believed that AI is infallible, that it makes the right decisions and gives the correct outcomes. For instance, users speculated that a loan rejection was based on their transactions and meant that they had ineligible finances or collateral to receive a loan. So, what can we do? For instance, with self blame, if people simply accept decisions as is, even when the decisions were wrong, then the low contestation has a potential to cause individual harm, but is also a missed opportunity for model feedback. What we can do is clarify the limitations of AI. We can calibrate AI authority by setting the right expectations about the system's capabilities, making the error modes and biases transparent to everyday users. We could also build competencies across three levels. We could think about a general accessible education about what AI is, how it works, what's its strengths and weaknesses. We could also develop an understanding of how specific AI applications work, but we could also provide in the moment explanations of AI outcomes. We could also develop and disseminate realistic narratives which align with the ways in which current AI applications encode problematic behaviors. And we should recognize that our AI approaches don't generalize across contexts. I would like to end with this quote from a survey respondent, which really underscores how widely human perceptions can vary across contexts, especially owing to the sociocultural, institutional, and technological factors. We call for recognizing that high acceptance of AI is a distinct problem from low acceptance or trust. Both high and low acceptance have different effects. They exist in different contexts and often affect different communities. Thank you, everyone. Here's my email in case you have any questions about the research.